In the winter of 1942, deep within the fog-covered forests of northern France, a strange whisper traveled among resistance fighters. It wasn't about a new German tank, nor a deadly weapon smuggled from Berlin. It was about a bicycle. A bicycle said to be capable of derailing an entire military train. At first, everyone laughed. How could 20 kilograms of thin steel challenge hundreds of tons of armored machinery? But the rumor persisted, and like all things during wartime, even the absurd demanded attention. One night, a courier brought a small metal fragment to the resistance headquarters. It was part of a gear mechanism unlike any normal bike component, thicker, reinforced, laced with narrow channels and powder residue. Attached to it was a note. Prototype BRID recovered from sabotaged rail line. Train derailed, 0 survivors. For the first time, the British intelligence heard the name BRID bicycle rail interference device. And the story suddenly became real. Behind this mysterious invention stood a young, almost forgotten British engineer, Arthur Hensley. He wasn't a genius, celebrated in newspapers, or a military officer with medals. He was simply a railway mechanic who understood every bolt, hinge, and vibration of a train track. Hensley had seen entire villages starved because German supply trains always arrived on time. He once said, "If we cannot stop the war, we can at least stop the rails that feed it." But explosives were too risky. Mines were too easy to detect. Cutting rails required time-resistance fighters did not have, so Hensley studied something no one cared about: abandoned bicycles. Thousands of them were left behind across Europe. Harmless, common, invisible. And that invisibility sparked an idea that would change the course of sabotage warfare. Hensley realized something crucial. Trains did not derail because of explosions. They derailed because of force imbalance. If something could grip the rail at the right moment, at the right angle, with just enough mechanical precision, the train would throw itself off the track. And that something could be disguised as a bicycle. He reinforced the frame, replaced the crank with a locking mechanism, added retractable steel wedges hidden inside the wheel rims, and lined the chain with a chemical fuse. It looked like a normal bike, but once locked onto the rail, the wheels would split, clamp the track, and trigger a catastrophic imbalance the moment a train touched it. A ghost weapon, silent, portable, deadly. It was early March 1943 when Arthur Hensley finally received approval for the first field test of the BRID. No more newspapers, no military medals, no official documents would ever mention this operation. It didn't even have a Cody name. In the dead silence before dawn, Hensley met with a small cell of French resistance fighters near an abandoned farm outside Rouen. Among them was Eileen, a fearless courier, who had guided Allied agents through the forest more times than anyone could count. When Hensley rolled out the disguised bicycle, Eileen raised an eyebrow. This is your miracle weapon." Hensley simply replied, "If it works, no Germans will ever laugh at a bicycle again." They all knew the risk. German military trains did not travel alone. Patrols followed. Scouts checked the tracks, and any sabotage attempt meant death. But that night, according to intercepted radio messages, a high-value supply train was scheduled to pass through the valley at exactly 4:22. Its derailment could cripple enemy operations in the entire region. And so, the nameless mission began. The group moved under the cover of darkness until they reached a quiet bend in the track, a perfect location where the train would naturally reduce speed before entering the valley. Hensley knelt beside the cold steel rail and flipped the bicycle upside down. In that moment, it no longer looked like a harmless bike. Metal plates clicked into place. Hinges secured themselves tightly. The front wheel split into 3 hidden wedges. Elaine watched in disbelief. "How long before the patrol comes?" "7 minutes," someone whispered. Hensley worked fast. He locked the frame onto the rail, tightened the last bolt, and inserted the chemical fuse inside the chain housing. A faint blue glow appeared, the activation signal. "It's ready," he said, dusting snow from his gloves. "Once the train touches the front wheel, the entire mechanism will engage in under a second. No more explosives, no more sound, just pure mechanical sabotage." At 4:20, the ground began to vibrate. 2 minutes early, everyone froze. Elaine mouthed something too quiet to hear, and the resistance fighters took cover behind the pine trees lining the hill. Hensley stayed low, watching the track. The train appeared a black steel monster with 20 cargo wagons and a locomotive that spat fire with every push of the engine. Its headlights sliced through the darkness like twin sabers. "This is it," Hensley whispered. As the locomotive neared the disguised bicycle, time seemed to slow. Metal screamed. Sparks exploded from the rails. The BRID locked, split, and clamped the tracks with surgical precision. The front wheels of the train lifted, shuddered, then threw the entire locomotive sideways. What followed was a thunderous chaos of twisting metal and shattering steel. The forest shook as wagons toppled over one another like collapsing towers. It worked terrifyingly well. By sunrise, smoke still curled from the twisted remains of the derailed train. German soldiers rushed to the scene like a disturbed swarm of hornets. Officers shouted orders. Medics searched wrecked wagons, and dogs sniffed frantically around the tracks. There were no survivors. What baffled the German engineers was the lack of explosives. No more burn marks, no more crater, no more residue. Sabotage. But how? One officer muttered. When they discovered the remnants of the bicycle mechanism fused into the rail, confusion turned into rage. This wasn't a bomb. This was a device, one they did not understand. The report sent to Berlin described it as a mechanical anomaly, presumably disguised as civilian equipment. Hitler's headquarters demanded answers, and the hunt began. 2 days later, a special German engineering unit arrived at the crash site. They were known as Sondergruppe M, a technical division specializing in unconventional sabotage. Their commander, Oberst Wilhelm Kajerger, studied the recovered fragments for hours. He reconstructed part of the mechanism and slammed his fist on the table. Someone built a weapon using a bicycle. Who would think of this? His second-in-command replied carefully, "Someone who understands trains better than we do." Kruger's face hardened. He issued a chilling order. "Search every village, every farm, every workshop. We are not hunting we are hunting a mind. The mind behind BRID." While the Germans launched their manhunt, the French resistance cell responsible for assisting Hensley was forced into hiding. Elaine Moreau gathered the group inside a collapsed barn. "They know it wasn't a bomb," she said. "They'll search every mechanic in the region, including the ones helping us." Hensley felt the weight of her words. He had never wanted fame, but now his invention was putting innocent villagers in danger. "I'll leave tonight," he said. If they find me, they find the device. And then they LL know how to reproduce it. But Eileen shook her head fiercely. You don't understand. They're not after the device. They're after the inventor. If they capture you, they will force you to rebuild it for them. Silence filled the barn. For the first time, Hensley realized the full consequence of his creation. That night, as rain hammered the roof of the barn, Hensley wrote a message to British command using a coded sheet only he possessed. He explained the danger. He explained the German response. If BRID falls into enemy hands, destroy all rail networks in this region before they deploy it. He knew what it meant. Scorched earth. Thousands of lives disrupted. But a BRID in German control would be catastrophic. Eileen approached him quietly. You regret building it, don't you? Hensley nodded. A weapon is easy to build, but choosing who gets to use it, that is the real burden. For several days, Sondergruppe M swept across the valley with ruthless precision. Every metal workshop was searched, every mechanic questioned, every abandoned bicycle, posters warning villagers about sabotage activities were plastered across walls. Kruger was convinced of one thing: a device like BRID requires a specialist. That specialist is still here. Meanwhile, Hensley and the resistance fighters hid inside a network of old wine cellars beneath the village. The tunnels were cold, cramped, and dripping with moisture, but they provided the perfect cover. Still, the tension grew each hour. Food was running low. Morale was fragile, and the Germans were getting closer. One evening, Eileen ventured above ground to gather news. She stopped at a small tavern where villagers whispered about the relentless German searches. At a corner table sat Marcel Duret, a farmer known for his temper and debts. His eyes darted nervously each time a German patrol passed. When Eileen approached him, he avoided her gaze. You're acting strange, Marcel, she said. He swallowed hard. They questioned me this morning. They know the saboteur had help. They say they'll burn the village if no one speaks. Line froze. And what did you tell them? Marcel didn't answer. That silence was more terrifying than any confession. Eileen ran back to the cellar tunnels as fast as she could. Hensley? They might know. We have to move. But it was too late. Footsteps echoed above them. Dozens of boots. German voices shouting commands. Kruger himself led the unit. Search every tunnel. They are hiding below. Panic surged through the cellar. Weapons were loaded. Papers burned. Maps torn apart. Hensley turned to Eileen. We can't outrun them. Not here. Not trapped underground. Eileen clenched her jaw. Then we need to split up. She handed him a forged identity card and a small pistol. Head toward the river. There's an old mill. Hide there until dawn. I'll mislead them. Hensley grabbed her arm. If they catch you, better me than the inventor. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The resistance cell dispersed through hidden exits. Hensley crawled through a narrow stone passageway leading into the forest. Rain mixed with mud, turning the ground slick and treacherous. Behind him, gunshots exploded in the tunnels. Shouts, screams. The Germans had found one of the exits. Hensley forced himself onward. Every rustle felt like footsteps. Every shadow looked like an enemy. Then a whistle. Short, sharp, German signal. They had spotted someone. Hensley threw himself into a ditch just as a patrol passed by, lamps cutting through the darkness. He held his breath as boots splashed only a few meters from him. The patrol moved on. He scrambled toward the river, heart pounding. The old mill was close, but so were the Germans. Hensley reached the old mill just before dawn. The wooden structure leaned toward the river like a tired giant. Its windows were shattered, its wheel frozen in rust. Inside, he found shelter among piles of forgotten grain sacks. He couldn't rest, not with the echo of gunfire still ringing in his mind. Then he heard footsteps. One set, light. Careful, Eileen slipped inside, drenched from the rain. "You made it," she whispered. Hensley exhaled in relief, but her expression was grim. Marcel talked. "The Germans know your face, your accent, everything." Asterisk. Hensley closed his eyes. He had expected this, but hearing it still cut deep. "There's no time," Eileen said. "A patrol is coming this way. You must leave France." Hensley reached into his coat and pulled out a folded sheet, the final blueprint of BRID. "If they capture me, this must never fall into their hands." Eileen stared at it. "Burn it." But Hensley shook his head. "No. I upgraded the device. The next version could bring down an armored train without even touching the wheels. It uses the rail's own tension." Eileen stepped back, horrified. "Arthur, why would you keep perfecting something like this?" Hensley's voice cracked. "Because war kept getting worse, and every time they built something stronger, I tried to stay one step ahead." He looked at the blueprint as if ashamed of it. "But this design, this one, is too dangerous." Before Eileen could answer, a shout erupted outside. German voices. Dozens Marcel Juret stumbled into view between soldiers. He looked terrified and guilty. "I told them where you'd run," he said, voice shaking. "I thought they'd spare the village." Kruger stepped forward, pistol drawn. "Arthur Hensley, you will come with us. You will rebuild your device, or everyone here dies." Hensley felt Eileen tense beside him. Without warning, she stepped in front of him. "He's not going anywhere." Kjaergaard aimed. Everything slowed. Hensley grabbed the blueprint, tore it into pieces, and stuffed the fragments into the mill's grinding gears. The machine roared to life, ancient wood groaning. Kruger shouted, "Stop him!" But it was too late. The gears chewed the blueprint into dust. Gunfire erupted. Eileen pulled Hensley toward a hidden back exit she had scouted earlier. They burst outside into the icy river, water splashing around their legs. Behind them, the mill caught fire, Kruger's men firing wildly. Hensley struggled to stay upright, the current dragging him. Eileen grabbed him fiercely. "Arthur, look at me!" He did. "You destroyed the design. Now you must live. Otherwise, it was for nothing." Together, they dashed into the forest as the mill collapsed behind them in flames. Kruger screamed orders, but the river mist swallowed their tracks. Hensley escaped France that night. Eileen did not. Her capture was never recorded. Her fate unknown. Years later, Allied archives recorded BRID technology was destroyed by its creator. No further copies exist, but rumors persisted. Some claimed the Germans later tried to reproduce the device. Others swore Eileen survived and joined another resistance network. And some said that somewhere in the forests of France, pieces of the original bicycle still lie buried beneath moss and soil. A ghost of a weapon. A ghost of a war, and a ghost of the engineer who gave the world a bicycle that could stop a train.